This is an RNZ podcast.
They say it takes a village to raise a child. I'm Kathryn Ryan, and here we draw on my conversations with experts on 9 to Noon to help you navigate family life. Well, helping young people make big decisions about their futures, our guest is professional careers advisor Caroline Sandford, whose book Your Career from the Start, Making the Decisions for Your Future, a Guide for Young Adults, is aimed at 15 to 25-year-olds. And it attempts to answer the universal question, how do you even start to figure out what career is right for you? It also lets parents in on the massive transformation in the workplace since their day. Caroline is with us in the Auckland studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Kathryn. How are you?
Good. Gosh, it's a challenging business that you're in with the speed at which everything changes.
Oh, it certainly is.
Yeah. And in some ways, it's about thinking the right things, isn't it, in the first outset, asking the right questions of oneself. Let's talk about the age that it's aimed at. 15-year-olds, what are the conversations you have with them?
Well, 15-year-olds, and even I'd go a little bit before then, but I think when people are starting to make decisions about what subjects they're taking, they're starting to make decisions about their future. So it's really for them to understand themselves, for them to get to know who they are. I mean, they are in a developmental stage. That's very much part of, what they're supposed to be doing. But it's also understanding what's important to them, their interests, where they seem to work best. And even though, we get a lot of that information as we get older and have experiences in our own work experiences, our children, they join sports groups, they operate within a classroom environment, they're a part of friendship groups. There's particular roles that they will naturally gravitate to, whether it's a leadership role, whether it's they're a good supporter, whether they thrive in being in a group situation or they thrive better when they're by themselves. All those sorts of things are part of who they are. And so when they sort of tune into that and get an understanding of whether they are their best and taking that into making decisions about their future, they can make better decisions for themselves.
It's not so much about picking one job at the age of whatever and saying, I really want to be a doctor, I really want to be this, I really want to be that. It's, as you say, coming to understand the sorts of skills and personality and interests you have and therefore what might be open to you. Could we talk about how you help young people, and let's stay in that age, I think, stay in that sort of mid-teens age, as you say, having to make calls about what to study, how you help them almost brainstorm or workshop what some of the areas they might be interested in having as a career could be?
The first part I like to break down, and my book certainly does this, into making decisions about your future. And this is at any stage, actually. But, if you get it right at the very beginning, you've got those tools for life, is that whole thing of what I sort of just alluded to about understanding how you work. So when you sort of stop and think about, well, what is important to me? And that really comes from understanding your values, because your values are instilled in you, from the way you've been brought up, from your family, from your parents, from your caregivers. So understanding that, and often people, even when I have people at all stages in their life come to see me, when I ask them about what's important to them, very few people can actually list it. They have an idea of a couple of things. So, working with whoever I have in front of me, whether it's a young person, and just getting them to see that that's important. So when they take into account looking at their whatever subjects and where that may be taking them, but taking them in making choices, having what's important to them as a very key to that is one of the things. But also looking at what interests them. So, there's, again, we can classify different occupations in different ways, but there is a very good way of seeing what certain things have in common, which I talk about in my book, which is called RIASIC, and that's understanding what things have in common. And often, we can make choices thinking, that something is in a particular way, but actually, it might be in an office environment. For some people, that'll be absolutely wonderful environment to be in. For others, it's like, hell on earth. And yet some people may be in that place that doesn't work for them. So really understanding when they're looking at different options and taking different subjects, where it might be taking them towards.
I love the career decision cycle that you've got in here, which is very straightforward and can be replicated throughout life, which is know who you are. Number one, what really matters to you, and that's constantly evolving. Explore your options. So again, don't just pick one thing you're determined you're going to do, but what sort of options are available, and then plan your action, and then create your future and possibly recreate it many times. I'm curious as to how you look at some of the characteristics people should think about. You sort of alluded to it. Are you an office person or are you an outdoors person? Should you be out on a building site? Would have been the old-fashioned way of saying go and work in a bank or go and work on a construction site. You talk about people who are thinkers versus feelers. What are the really primary characteristics that it might pay to be aware of when we're thinking about what we should do?
I think that's a very complex question and answer, because I think there's a number of different things. So looking at, when you're saying about feeling and thinking, that's part of looking at your personality and what, how you... what sort of environment that you thrive in, but also looking at what your interests are is another part of it, looking at your values, looking at your strengths. All of those become part of it. It's not just one element, and I think that's the danger. And some, I sometimes have a client who may have completed, for example, a personality test or a profile and gone to say, well, this is who I am, I am and yet it's just far more complex than that. It requires many different elements to bring it in. And just, the one thing that I really advocate and push is that everyone's journey is different. Just because we might have similarities does not mean that the same path is going to be right for that person. So it's really owning, what is important to you, what are the characteristics that you need to have, and how can you actually create that. And a big part, Kathryn, you talked about that second part, which, is about that exploring options. So that is really important, for every individual, once they have an understanding of themselves, is actually go and explore the options themselves. What's the reality of these choices? So, it's taking off job descriptions, a title of, of what a teacher, but looking at, how is that broken down? What do they do day to day? What is their reality?
Well, that's why you've got many chapters, the fact that it's multifaceted. But there's another one here that's more about discovering your interests. This is the RNZ, which is realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, conventional. And again, it's not to sort of use that to stick it into a computer and, chug out some job options at the other end. It's really becoming aware of the sorts of things that you either gravitate towards or frankly enjoy, or, as you point out, have strengths in.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this, it's a raising your awareness and understanding how important it is, because, on the other side, the flip side, I see people who may be in their 30s, 40s, 50s. My eldest client's being 70, bless her. I'm looking for a next challenge, but they're often, in places that they're not enjoying, that they're finding, unstimulating or bored, or they're not thriving, and they're wanting a change, but they don't have that understanding of those things.
How many people do you meet who really got it right on first go? And this is hard for these later generations, because you're paying a lot often for the training that you're getting. At the moment, there's some good opportunities to get some free training, actually, first time. But, you used to be able to change gear once or twice, and you hadn't mortgaged your house doing so. But how many people really get it absolutely right on their first go?
Yes, and it's interesting because that's not our reality. You make the one right choice. I've worked with workshops where we've had parents and their children in the room, and I often ask that question, for the parents, how many of you are doing what you started out doing at school? And very rarely do I get, I might get one person that puts their hand up. So, the world is continually changing, and we have to be nimble with that. This is the reality right now in our COVID-19 sideswipe that's come, that we're dealing with, which is very uncertain at the times, but also, people have had to suddenly rethink, reframe, I was on a trajectory, I thought I was going somewhere, and suddenly my industry has imploded. So it's coming back to, okay, some people will make decisions because they need to earn a living right now, but looking at the longer term picture, and okay, well, I've got the opportunity of maybe recreating myself for the future, and what is it that I need to take account? It's all these things that we're talking about.
What are some of the conversations you have with parents then about the conversations to have with your kids? We've alluded to some of it. Don't start talking about specific jobs. Open questions, what are you interested in? What do you enjoy doing? What motivates you? What fits your personal? What do you think your personal strengths are? What would you tell me your personal strengths are? You're not going to put it quite like that in a conversation with a teenager, but that's what you as the parent is trying to elicit. Yeah. But then how do you also approach how to build or explore? Because going off to a specific set of training at a polytechnic or a university is one thing, but there's lots of other ways to explore. You talk about job shadowing and work experience. Are there other ways that people can try things out without signing away thousands of dollars?
Absolutely. And I think besides understanding who you are, I think the next big, huge part of this is actually that reality testing, which I talked about. And, as a parent, if you can expose your children to as many opportunities, as many real life situations as possible, to open up their eyes to the reality of work, to the reality of particular options, then you're giving them a real gift, because they then have some understanding of what it looks like. If I'm going down this, I'm going to actually be in an office, the whole time, or I'm going to be out in the field, or I'm going to need to travel. Just that reality of their choices is really, really important, rather than going straight into a training, whether that's university or trade or whatever. Of course, there is some free training there, but, there will be some debt that will be linked to that, most possibly a loan. And, if it's not right for you, you're coming out with something, or you may have dropped out because you don't enjoy it. So important to do that reality testing first up.
Gosh, I had a question. It's just slipped right out of my head. What do you do when everyone wants to be a filmmaker, which was about 5-10 years ago, wasn't it? Lord of the Rings time. Or everyone wants to be a social media influencer, or everyone wants, you have these fads, and it's great that kids are getting excited about something, but then there's the reality of you pouring all that money into a specialist training course, and there's only so many film and screen production graduates who are going to get jobs. Hopefully lots at the moment, actually, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
The gap between what they think they want to do and what they're likely to come up against. You don't want to squash it, do you? You don't want to squash it, but
no.
How do you have sensible conversations with them about it?
So as a parent, I think it's really important, like you talked about, the open questions. It's hugely important not to be judgmental and say, don't be stupid, or everyone wants to do that, let's get real. Because what you're going to do is close down that conversation and close down your child's want to come and share with you. You want to keep that open. You want to find out what they know about it. So it might have been, tell me what you know about it. Tell you how what you need to do to get into there. How can we find out more? And if, I talk about in the book about informational interviewing. I think this is such a key skill when you're looking at options, is to go and find someone who's doing the job you think you might like to do, and find out their reality. What is it, what is the industry doing? And what does the training involve? What is the likelihood to get a job in this particular thing? What is it that I need to do, if I wanted to do that? How can I find out more? So research, and reality testing is hugely important.
People are going to have to live with constant job changes. We've been told this is going to be the reality, and to some extent it already is. So it's also just building some robust skills, job applications, getting CVs together, having work experience. It's interesting often to see young people go into tertiary training of some kind and then actually just get a job at a retail store somewhere, or and just work and earn some money for a while. And that shouldn't be seen as a drama, should it? These are all parts of putting the puzzle together, isn't it? Education, learning, earning, working.
all of that. And I think, it's a view of looking at what a career is. And a career in my field, and my colleagues would always say that a career is your whole of life. It's your experiences all along the way. So it is your study, it is your jobs, it is your hobbies, your sports, your being on parental leave. It's all of those things is part of your career, and they all add to the journey and to your skills and to your knowledge. So nothing is ever wasted. It is important, however, to have, as long as you've done that research and that you're doing something that you want to do and that you like, that's an important part of it as well.
Yeah, but just some good work experience for a year out or whatever while you think about the next phase. You mentioned parents struggling to visualise, I guess, what modern workplaces are like compared to, I don't know, let's say they had their kids when they were 30 and they're now in their mid-40s or 50 or whatever. How much has it changed even in that time, the environment, and what are the biggest changes to navigate?
Yeah, I think huge changes, and I think our kids are facing changes at such a rapid rate that we never had to, even though it's right in our face right now. But honestly, in their lifetime, it's been massive, and it will continue to be. And they'll probably be likely to get jobs that are not even invented yet. Many of them will be in that space. So navigating that, understanding, how that works, that there is no such thing as a job for life anymore, that just to get a qualification is the most important thing, that go after the money. Some people still do that, go and study this because I know you're going to earn good money. The reality is, if you don't enjoy it, you're unlikely to do well, or it'll probably take its toll, if you really don't enjoy it. And therefore, will the money be there at the end is a question mark. So, it's really important to make decisions way beyond just, having that one end and goes and really embracing, the need to be creative in this world we live in now. The need to think about possibly a portfolio career, which is having income from several different streams, not just one. And that's a reality for many people. I think the creative industry, and I think I talk about that in my book, but I think they have embraced that for years. That they're often their work is project based, so therefore they can't rely on that steady one income. So they've always had to be creative with that, and I think we have to embrace it in many different industries now as well.
Thank you very much, Caroline. I'm sure that'll be very popular. Love Your Career from the Start, Making Decisions for Your Future, a guide for young adults, is by Caroline Sandford. Calico Publishing it is.